Tonight on The Story, it's a spud showdown. The humble potato. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. They're an important part of the Northwest economy.
Hundreds of thousands of acres. There's over 100 potato farmers in Oregon. It's a top producing vegetable in the state of Oregon.
But now Oregon state vegetable is at the center of a federal debate. Are they really vegetables?
Potatoes are certainly a vegetable.
Or should they be reclassified to another food group, perhaps grain?
They are grown in the ground. No grain I know of is grown in the ground.
Or do we call them something else entirely? So many questions. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story on this Friday night. Tonight we're talking taters. Did you know the potato is Oregon's state vegetable? It just got that designation last year, so congrats, potatoes. But now the federal government might be moving towards reclassifying potatoes. As soon as next year, they might be no longer considered a vegetable. Some are arguing the potatoes are not as healthy as other vegetables, but potato farmers, as you heard, and Northwest senators all disagree. Ashley Koch reports.
In your day-to-day life, how much do you think about potatoes? Cody Fazio thinks about them a little more than average.
Fourth generation farmer. My great grandfather came to Sauvie Island in 1942. We've been growing potatoes here ever since.
It's early in the potato season.
Here's a potato start. If you can see, there's a little sprout growing right there.
Seed potatoes have just gone into the ground.
Then we'll water them up and we'll harvest them in September and October.
By this time next year, these sprouts will be full-sized potatoes, headed out to your local grocery store. In that time, they might also move to a new food group. The U.S. Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee is considering changing up how we think about potatoes. Right now, they're considered vegetables. Next year, they could be part of the grain food group. The Dietary Guidelines Association gets together every 5 years to talk about how Americans eat. The committee is made up of 20 doctors and scientists from across the country. They've been working to develop nutrition guidelines for the next 5 years. Those dietary guidelines are the backbone of the country's nutrition policy. The U.S. Departments of Agriculture and Health and Human Services work together to publish the guidelines. The next ones are due in January 2025. They influence everything from school lunches to WIC policies to what kind of food gets federal research funding. Right now, white potatoes are considered starchy vegetables. But the humble spud has found itself at the center of some debate in recent years. The World Health Organization excludes it from their vegetable recommendations. Harvard's School of Public Health kept potatoes out of their vegetable category, writing, "Potatoes, unlike lettuce and carrots, can cause blood sugar to spike and raise the risk of weight gain and diabetes." And the UK's Eat Well guide lumps them in with bread, cereal, and pasta. But if you ask potato growers here in the Northwest,
it's part of the plant that you eat. It's a vegetable.
Gary Roth from the Oregon Potato Commission agrees.
Potatoes are certainly a vegetable.
And senators from the Northwest sent a letter to the USDA and HHS writing, "The scientific justification behind the assertion that potatoes are not vegetables is not strong, and there are documented nutritional benefits of potatoes." There are. A medium-sized potato has about 170 calories, 5 grams of protein, and about 3 grams of fiber.
What people don't realize is there's more potassium in a potato than a banana. There's as much protein in a potato as an egg. There's as much vitamin C in a potato as a grapefruit.
Of course, that's not the case if you're mainly eating French fries and potato chips, but potatoes are versatile. They're used in lots of cultures, and they're cheap. And potato farming is a big industry here in the Northwest.
Idaho's number 1, Washington's number 2, and depending on the year, Oregon is either 4 or 5.
Oregon's potato farmers worry that if their darling root vegetable is reclassified, it'll cause confusion for their customers.
Consumers recognize vegetables for what they are. They recognize potatoes as a vegetable, and they would be, I think, very confused if they started to look for potatoes in the bread aisle.
And they worry that potato growers could lose out on some of that federal research funding.
There's constantly investment being made in developing potatoes that can just be grown as simply as possible. And I believe that a lot of that would really go away.
But for now, they're just doing what farmers do.
I knew I wanted to farm since I was 5 years old, and I love every day of it.
Waiting. Ready to deal with whatever the season brings from their fields and the federal government. Ashley Koch, KGW News.
All right, now it's your chance to weigh in on the tater debate. Are potatoes vegetables? Can you really argue that they're grains? Give it a shot. Or should we call them something else? Would it change your eating habits if they're reclassified? I kind of worry, I think that is the worry behind all of that. Let us know, will you? The email address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. In Oregon, caring for the environment is a really big deal, and the leadership for that starts at the governor's office. Last night, environmental reporter Cale Williams talked with Governor Kotek about some kind of thorny issues, including the environmental impact of her housing priorities. Tonight in part 2, he'll get into even more controversial issues like offshore wind and timber harvests.
Few places in the country have renewable energy like the Pacific Northwest. We've got panels collecting solar energy from the sun, and a whole system of dams that draw carbon-free electricity from our rivers. When the wind blows, we harness that power with turbines, but only on land. That could change in the next decade, though, as the federal government has plans to develop floating wind turbines off the southern Oregon coast. Earlier this year, the federal government finalized 2 areas off Brookings and Coos Bay for offshore wind development. But many on the south coast feel like their concerns about the impacts of offshore wind have gone unheard.
Tribal members, folks in the seafood industry, feel like they're being steamrolled by the feds, that there is not meaningful engagement. And they wrote a letter to you asking you to, come out against the auctions that are supposed to happen later this year until that roadmap is fulfilled. Is that something that you're willing to entertain?
Well, the good thing about where we are, I think, on offshore wind is I agree with local communities that this hasn't been the best process. There are concerns as Oregonians that we want to address. Our fishing industry, the cultural impacts of that related to our tribe's concerns. I'm very committed to working with the local community so everybody gets heard. So if we do move forward, we do it in the right way.
Gotcha. I mean, the auctions are scheduled for later this year.
Yes, the auctions themselves. I mean, my understanding of that process is there's a lot of process that happens even after the auctions if they were to go forward. But we are engaging on a regular basis with BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, about what the next steps are. I am not going to let the federal government expose Oregon communities to really bad consequences.
Another policy facing considerable pushback is the Habitat Conservation Plan for state forests in western Oregon. The plan, as it's currently proposed, would protect some areas in Tillamook and Clatsop counties from logging, and would in turn shield the state from lawsuits over the Endangered Species Act. It would also cut down on timber harvests and the revenue those counties get from logging. In February, Kotek sent a letter saying she would work in the next session to find state money to offset those losses. But that hasn't exactly satisfied people who live in those counties.
The folks that I talked to out there say that, that money would be well and good, but would not replace potential jobs that are lost. What would you say to them?
I think there are a complex set of possible consequences for the HCP. And I want to make sure as governor to work with local communities to try to adjust for any impacts there will be. What the HCP will bring to everybody after a couple years of work is certainty, right? I think one of the challenges when it comes to potential loss of jobs is our timber off of our state lands is only one piece of that. We're in a global market. We're competing globally for timber products and how logs are used. We have to have some new ideas on the table to protect Oregon so we can keep those jobs here while we're also dealing with the financial impacts of an HCP.
One potential solution that's been floated would be to decouple timber revenues from the funding of rural counties and school districts. I asked Kotek if that was something she'd be in favor of, but didn't exactly get a straight answer.
So there might be a longer term conversation out there, but right now we're focused in on the concerns for the near term on the impacts of HCP.
Don't want to take a position on that quite yet.
We will be wrestling with this for the next several years with the legislature about how we support our rural counties.
To finish the interview, I wanted to take a step back. So I asked Kotek what informs her view on environmental issues in Oregon, a state with vast beauty, plentiful natural resources, and some environmental issues that have, so far at least, seemed intractable. She pointed to the time she spent last year traveling to every county in the state. Not just the things she saw, but also the people she talked to.
I've been with farmers who talk about their love of the land and how they want to steward the land, and they talk about issues around drought and making sure they have the water for future generations to grow the things we grow in Oregon. What I learned on the road was there's so many people who care about what they do from an environmental perspective that I'm hopeful that we can actually figure this out and continue to do what we're doing here, protect the environment we love, because there's so many beautiful places, but do it in a way that people can be successful, particularly in rural communities.
Cale Williams, KGW News.
Thank you, Cale. And while we're talking about Governor Kotek, today her office sent a list of questions to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission asking all about the role of Oregon's first spouse, Amy Kotek Wilson. But it may be a while before there's an answer because the Ethics Commission said the governor's questions are going to be on hold until the commission decides on ethics complaints that have already been filed over that very issue. The governor wants her wife to have an official role in her administration, although not paid. 3 top staffers didn't like that idea so much and left in protest. But Governor Kotek dug in and said other governors around the country have an office for the first spouse, and it's time for Oregon to do the same. Here are the questions then that she wanted and submitted to the ethics folks. Number 1, may the first partner as a public official participate in the development of, advise on, and or promote the governor's priorities consistent with the ethical duties required of public officials? Number 2, if the first partner is performing official duties as a public official in the governor's office supporting the governor's priorities, may the first partner be supported by staff and provided other office resources necessary to perform such assigned official duties consistent with Oregon government ethic laws? You can read between the lines there. Other office resources, that probably means people, and that does mean your tax dollars supporting those people. And number 3 is a bit open-ended. Many public officials are volunteers who serve Oregon without compensation, such as the thousands of individuals serving on state boards and commissions. The current first partner is solely a volunteer. Given this set of facts, what other ethical considerations should we consider? But there's no timeline for when the case over the complaints will be completed, and at that point the commission will answer these questions. So don't hold your breath on any of this stuff. We'll let you know how it all shakes out. Coming up next on The Story, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler has released a new camping ban proposal since his last one is tied up in the courts, how this one is different and why he thinks this one will survive a legal challenge. Plus, an update on my Tainted Water series in Eastern Oregon, the DEQ leveling yet another fine against the Port of Morrow over wastewater violations. And this is on top of the $2 million plus fine they levied against the port last fall for similar violations. We'll have the details when The Story returns. We have a follow-up tonight on our special report, Tainted Waters. The Oregon Department of Environmental Quality has fined the Port of Morrow $727,000 for violating its wastewater treatment permit again. This is a new fine. It's on top of the $2.4 million fine DEQ leveled last year. We detailed the problem in our special report and explained how fertilizer from farmers and industrial waste from the Port of Morrow and others is contaminating a huge aquifer below Morrow and Umatilla counties. If you missed it, you should check it out. It's waiting for you on our KGW YouTube page. The worst areas are near the town of Boardman in eastern Oregon. The problem with the port comes from nitrate-contaminated water. It's put out by food processors on the port property. The companies put out more water than the port can store, so the port uses pipes and sprinklers to spread the nitrate water on nearby farm fields. If it puts out too much water, the water can easily seep down through the sandy soil and reach the aquifer below. That's a problem because thousands of people use backyard wells to tap into that aquifer, and nitrates are not good for humans. So the state tightly regulates how much water the port can put out, especially during the non-growing season. That's the time between the 1st of November and the end of February. That's a dangerous time because there are fewer plants to suck up the nitrogen being spread with the water on the fields. The latest series of fines totals $727,000 and covers 867 different times that the port put too much water on the ground during the non-growing season. Becca Puskas is the Enforcement and Compliance Manager for the DEQ. I talked with her today.
The problem is that the port has limits on how much nitrogen it can apply to the land and what type of soil conditions it can apply it under, and it exceeded those conditions. One thing that's really important about what's happened over the last non-growing season is that one of the tools that we had in the settlement is working, because they've had more violations in low-risk farm fields and 0 violations in high-risk fields.
Now, this is the report that backs up the fines, and sure enough, if you look at the center column, it says low. That means low risk of getting into wells because they're not close. The state told the port it would fine them $750 for each violation in a low-risk field, but $7,500 for each violation in a high-risk field, and there were no violations in the high-risk fields. The state does not want to shut down the port because of the huge economic impact it has in the area, and because, as DEQ Director Leah Felden told me, it would not immediately change the pollution level of the aquifer. The Port of Morrow sent me a statement today saying that they are investing $500 million to upgrade their wastewater treatment system to meet DEQ requirements. When it's in place, they say, they will be able to stop spreading that nitrate water in the wintertime. In the meantime, the state allowed the port to send 80% of their fine to support a safe water drinking program. That comes out to about $580,000. Moving on. This week, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler released a new plan to replace his old camping ban that a judge paused several months ago. It prohibits camps that are blocking sidewalks, ADA ramps, businesses, or any property where the city posts no trespassing signs. It would also make it unlawful to go onto private property, start fires, and build up garbage and debris, among other things. This plan allows for a fine of up to $100 and/or 7 days of jail time. But it can only be enforced if there are shelter spaces available and people refuse to leave the place where they're camping. You may remember the last camping ban has strict rules about banning camping between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. with colored maps showing where people could and could not camp. This proposal is less restrictive, which is partly why the mayor thinks this one will survive any legal challenges.
We have used information both from the court system, information that the plaintiffs who originally opposed our original ordinance had stated, information that we got from service providers and others, and we've put together a package that we think is responsive to the criticisms that we heard. Now, we didn't actually get a full opinion from the court on why the court enjoined our original ordinance, but we believe we have enough information. We're very confident that this particular ordinance that we're bringing forward on the 18th will survive legal scrutiny.
The mayor called the ordinance a sliver of a much larger strategy to address homelessness in our area and said the law enforcement component is a last-ditch effort for those who do not want help.
So if we give carrot after carrot after carrot to somebody, if we offer them shelter and they say, nope, I don't want it, and they continue to camp in the public right-of-way, they continue to block doorways, they continue to have lawn furniture and garbage all over the place, we now have law enforcement tools that we can bring to bear for those who just don't want help. It's a last-ditch effort, but we need those law enforcement tools along with all of the other humanitarian services that we're providing. The public wants us to create a humane approach that connects people to services, but they also want us, and they have a right to expect, that we will maintain public safety in the public right-of-way. And this set of tools allows us to do that.
Obviously, shelter beds are a huge part of this. They need to be available for people for this plan to be enforceable. And Mayor Wheeler says hundreds more will become available soon. He says in the not too distant future, and it's going to be in the form of second and third mass encampments. City Council will consider the proposal for the first time on April 18th, with a possible vote coming the following week. Up next on the story, Portland's Justice Center downtown was badly damaged during the 2020 protests, but investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi got his hands on permit applications filed with the city that detail new security measures totaling $3 million. So what's changing? You'll see coming up next when the story returns. The plywood boards covering up the Justice Center in downtown Portland will soon be replaced with new permanent security. The building suffered significant damage during the protests of 2020. Investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi shows us how $3 million will be spent to fortify the building to avoid a repeat of what happened 4 years ago.
Nearly 4 years after mass demonstrations rocked downtown Portland, the Multnomah County Justice Center is still boarded up. But soon that will change. Permit applications filed with the City of Portland indicate the plywood boards protecting the building will be replaced with new permanent security measures, including sliding metal screens to protect the entry doors and bulletproof glass to shield windows at a cost of $3 million. The Justice Center suffered significant damage following the murder of George Floyd, a black man killed by Minneapolis police. In May of 2020, rioters smashed their way into the building and set small fires while employees worked inside. The building houses roughly 450 inmates and is the sole booking and release center for Multnomah County. In a memo, Multnomah County Sheriff wrote, "These building enhancements will help ensure safety for those inside the detention center, and that we never sustain such damages in the future." Across the street, construction crews are already working on security upgrades outside the Mark Hatfield Federal Courthouse. Crews are installing large airplane hangar-type doors, which can be lowered to protect the front of the building. The federal courthouse suffered $1.6 million in damages during the 2020 protests. The security upgrades at the federal courthouse are expected to be done later this month. Construction at the Justice Center won't begin until December, with scheduled completion in March of 2025. Kyle Aboshi, KGW News.
Interesting stuff. Thanks, Kyle. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. By the way, I've seen your emails coming in on the whole potato debate. Keep them coming. It's very fun. Hey, and remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. Timbers 360, all about the Portland Timbers, is coming your way next. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you right back here Monday night at 6:30. As we go, we'll leave you with a look out the window over Portland.